Welcome to WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast. This episode was made possible by a sponsorship from Syneos Health. For more information, visit syneoshealth.com. In this episode, Taryn Grome, co-founder and editor of Pharma Voice, meets with Astrid DeFries-Lansing, EVP, Executive Creative Director, GSW, powered by Syneos Health.
Welcome to the WOW podcast, Astrid.
Hi, I am so happy to be here. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to meet you. Can you please share a bit of your career journey leading to your current position as Executive VP and Executive Creative Director at GSW?
Yes, absolutely. How much time do you have? It's been a while. Well, my career started out in Germany. You might pick up a bit of an accent. I'm originally from Germany, small, beautiful town, Regensburg, and went in Germany to the Academy of Fine Arts. And I studied forever. My parents would tell you everything from fine arts to design, communications design, and ended up finally graduating and was lucky enough to start my own agency right out of college in Germany, branding focus, mostly luxury, automotive, fashion, and a little healthcare, which was foreboding for my future career in the US. I came to New York as an adventure. I wasn't anything I ever planned to stay. I think a lot of people don't necessarily plan that, but New York is a city that just captures you, and it did. And fast forward now 20 years, I'm still here. I started out my career in healthcare by accident, probably. I didn't know much about pharmaceutical advertising or any advertising really, just had a bit of a book under my arm. And CDM, as we all know, still one of the major and leading agencies in our industry, made me an offer. They saw my book and said, yeah, we'll hire you. And the reason why to me it was formative is, the company not only hired me with a terrible accent, very little language skills, great portfolio, but gave me a chance and sponsored me through the whole process to the point where just this year I became an American citizen. From there on, stayed a long time with the CDM Group, now also known as SCG Group, and from CDM to Agency RX, which is now DDB Health. Was with those guys for 15 years, so very consistent there. Rose up the ranks, learned a lot as an art director, learned a lot about the industry, the people, and really, really learned to enjoy and love what I did. Doing what I do and helping people and putting my skills to work every day was amazing. And living in the city and becoming a part of all that was fantastic. From there, I jumped ship eventually, had to spread my wings and went from small startup, really small startup, to a mid-size agency, which you all probably know, BGB Group. Fantastic, still family-owned agency in the middle of Soho. Was there for some time as well until I got a call from Havas. And Havas, that was my gig before where I am currently. Again, a wonderful agency with really smart, talented people. And I joined those guys for almost 4 years until I got the call from Andrew Shermer. And the rest is history today. It's been over 6 months and it's been fantastic. I'm at GSW New York, as you know, and joined Andrew's group as the Executive Creative Director in July. And they're part of, obviously, a leadership team, all extremely wonderful, talented, good people. I want to emphasize that. The beauty about GSW New York is, and that was its reputation, but truly, truly, a no politics, no nonsense, extremely personable, loyal, supportive people that till this day I still think stands out. You don't find that much in advertising. not always in our industry. So it's a wonderful place to be at. So that's it in a nutshell. I hope it wasn't too fast or too long, Taryn.
No, Astrid, that was great. Actually, there's quite a bit to unpack in there. First
Uh-huh.
of all, I'm fascinated that right out of college, you had the wherewithal and the guts to start your own agency. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I have to give kudos. I wasn't alone. I had a partner, and when you're that young, you don't think far. It's not today everything's calculated. What's your next career move? When you're that young, and I was in my mid-20s, I just lived by the day, and that was just there. The opportunity was right in front of me, and that's what you do, and it worked out well. So yeah, I guess it's wow. When I look back, it is. But in the moment, it didn't feel like that. It was just the right thing, the most natural thing to do. So, yeah.
Well, kudos to you. That's amazing. I mean, most people are still trying to figure out, if where they're going to go do their laundry after they graduate from college. So,
Yep.
that's and I am long enough in the industry. See how I didn't say old, long enough in the industry to remember CDM when it was Klein Davis and Mann. So certainly there
Yes.
is a lot of history there with that agency. And I want to say welcome to the U.S. citizen
Thank
2021.
you.
Congratulations.
Thank
So
you.
6 months in, you're working with Andrew Shermer, who is fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell me, what has been the biggest surprise to you in this first 6 months at GSW? And I'm also old enough to know that it's Gerbeck, Schnell, and Weisheimer, GSW. So
Yes. Well, listen, surprises in so far that whenever you meet a new team that, especially under the current circumstances in a pandemic, we don't have the luxury as we did in the past to just walk up to someone, start chatting, getting to know them. Everything is formalized, right? You're on video calls. So surprises, I would call them more encounters when you really start to get to know your team. And in my case, I inherited a team from close to 30 people, all remote at the time, and trying to get to know and understand who they are, not just as individuals, but personally and professionally. It's a lot harder and a lot more forced in the world we live in. So the surprises were mostly positive, positive in a way that I truly am blessed having such a talented team. Again, handed to me by Andrew and GSW, really smart, dedicated, hardworking individuals. It's amazing. That was truly a surprise to me that I couldn't really be happier with the pool of talent, including my two immediate reports, Ted Mendelsohn and Mike Keever, who are the best. And kudos to those guys. They made my day from the beginning and are still doing so. So Syneos is, and this is and was a surprise to me, in all honesty, was an entity that I was largely unaware of. I hadn't even crossed my mind in the past. I learned very quickly what an amazing resource Syneos is. The resource, not just from a medical perspective, absolutely an amazing depth and bench in medical knowledge, but it's just everything comes with from the center with heart. There is really everything handed to you, whatever you can wish for. And having such open arms coming to a company was surprising to me. I didn't know them before. I didn't know who JD was, and a lot of the other people, and everybody just came forward, welcoming, supportive, and it's truly amazing what Syneos can do. And I really do think powered by Syneos is that engine, right, that drives us at GSW, and that's been a surprise. Never heard of them, but that was a good one.
that's awesome. Well, congratulations to you. So let's dig in a little bit about your creative philosophy. Um,
Hmm.
you believe that creativity is an attitude, not simply a skill set. Can
Yes.
you explain this to me?
Yes. First of all, creativity, and that's something I had to learn and learned gladly in my career, is not simply something that comes from a department. I always say when we brainstorm ideas, creative, you work in an agency, you are creative. I don't care what your title is, which department you're from. Creativity comes from a medical person as much as a strategist, even account people. I always joke or not, finance people gotta be creative in advertising, right? These numbers have to be twisted around for sure. So creativity is a mindset more than a skill set. It's not because I went to school forever, my parents paid a fortune for that, that I'm skilled and better at my job. It is because I have an open, flexible, curious, agile mindset that leads me and others in the agency to those next big ideas. And that's to me an attitude, that's to me a mindset versus just learning what to do. We all learn, right? We all went to school for our degrees in various and different ways, yet that doesn't necessarily determine you're being truly open-minded. And I think that's, for me, the sweet spot for anyone being successful in our industry. It's that mindset. And again, it doesn't matter, right? Account person, medical. I love working with strategists, medical writers, medical directors who have that, right? Who have that open mind, that go-getter attitude, that let's turn this data around. Let's take a look at it from a different angle. Be open-minded and open up your heart. That can be coming from anywhere, and that's the difference between skill and attitude.
Astrid, that's great. I don't know if the finance people are going to be so thrilled about your
Oh
use
well.
of creative financing. I'm just joking. You also believe that creative solutions can be found where you least expect them. Where are some of the most unusual places that you have found inspiration?
It's interesting. I do have to say that there are two things I learned, and that is the blank canvas. And when I remember my very early days at the Academy of Fine Arts in Germany, and the school I went to was the foundation for Bauhaus. Some of us artists know what Bauhaus is and what Bauhaus was, and it was basically returning back to a certain simplicity in form and thinking. And with that, modern design really truly started. And I think in the approach of creativity, you got to start from an empty canvas, from a white blank canvas. So don't have preconceived notions. Don't think because you know something or you've done something or you have had X amount of awards or you've done it, or you never do. You always start from scratch. So I'm inspired by people that open their minds and just let it all go. Think this next ad, this next concept, that is your very first one. And you dive in with that kind of clean, empty slate as much as you possibly can. I think that's always my way to get inspired. The other idea for me is get out in nature. Currently, if you were to see me, I'm surrounded by nothing but trees. And it's that beautiful, clean, fresh, nature inspired environment that clears your head. And once that head's clear and you're not focused too hard on the goal, like when I'm concepting or when I try to come up with something, try not to look too closely at it. Look away from it for a bit. Go for a walk, take a shower, eat, drink, whatever that is, but just clear your head.
Excellent. I also find that to be an effective way just to kind of like clear your mind. And I get some of my best ideas when I'm brushing my teeth. That's just me, though.
There you go.
You talk about that blank slate, and that can be quite intimidating to folks, having to fill in something where there is nothing. So again, congratulations, and I love that you're inspired by nature. You're also passionate about creating campaigns, as you say, that speak to human truths and that are
Yes.
strikingly beautiful and unique at the same time. Those concepts don't always meld together. How do you do so and create a cohesive campaign?
Yeah, look, I mean, first of all, I think the empathy and that part that speaks to human truth that's the reason why we do what we do in healthcare advertising. This isn't bubble gum, this isn't a sports car, and I've done those things. We're always, always, always by the end of the day dealing with tragedy, sadness, human devastation. I mean, that's a reality, and I do think doing that without empathy, without trying to get behind what's truly going on with patients, even HCPs who are treating them, you can't do good work. So that that human truth, and that's why I love working with my strategy partners. That's what gets us all going. That's what gets me out of bed. That's what makes me want to come up with a good idea, is to learn and understanding what people are really actually going through. Listen, even if it's something that's not so hard hitting, I did oral contraception and things that are just not as devastating, obviously. Yet still, you deal with an underlying issue, something that a human being needs help and support with. So I think that's number one. You gotta understand what's really driving these patients, these HCPs. What's driving them? What's worrying them? What keeps them up at night? And once you get and understand that, that's when you start leaning in as a creative into the tonality of a concept. It has to speak to them. It has to make them feel heard. Now, once we're past that part and we actually found an idea, came across something, a visual, a word, a sound, whatever that is, beauty to me is essential. I mean, that's probably coming from my background, studying the arts forever. um, Things have to be aesthetically pleasing, but beauty isn't just something that's superficial. I'm not saying just put makeup on a pig. That's not the idea. But the idea is that a visual, a video, a sound, it has to have certain beauty to it. We're human beings. I think all human beings by nature are drawn to beauty, and beauty could be anything. Again, but for instance, trees. Looking up into the little tiny branches of a tree in the winter against a white sky, that's beauty. And I think in the delicateness of finding the right tone, just the right color, just the right shape, that beauty is attractive. And in the end of the day, what's advertising? We need to attract, right? We need to make people look up and say, oh, that's cool. So yes, that's the beauty part for sure.
That's fantastic. I love how you described that. I was transported. You're in a service business and you
Hmm.
have clients you have to satisfy. At the same time, creativity is so subjective.
Yeah.
How do you go about selling ideas and concepts to the clients? How do you get them to come on to your side? Because they can be particular.
Yes, they can be. Well, first of all, I think it's something you learn over time. I see it over and over, now in younger people, starting out their careers or in the middle of it. And I think back to myself, there are two ways in the beginning. You are either shell shocked and just sit there, take notes, say yes and nod and move on and try to figure it all out, knowing that this made no sense what this client just asked you to do. Or you get combative, right? And we have that often, and understandably in our industry, that you're passionate, right? You're passionate about your idea. You know you're making sense. You love what you're doing, and somebody is giving you feedback that makes no sense, or is rude, or whatever, right? It's hard. So some people, can get combative about that, and we still see that often happening in creatives. Some have that reputation, but I think the goal is for everyone in creative to survive without a heart attack or frustration or resentment, is to learn that nothing is personal. It's all personal, it's all subjective, and it's never personal. Personal is nobody says or does anything because of you. It's something I learned a long time ago, reading Miguel Ruiz, Four Agreements. It's probably the best book ever read. And he does say nothing other people say or do is personal. Now, I don't want to get philosophical, but when you have a client who is giving you commentary, you always need to keep in the back of your head that's just their perspective. So what I do is I lean in. You got to lean in. If a client feels like you're rejecting, not listening, not taking serious, they shut down. Now, with any other conversation in life we have, when that happens, people are not likely to listen to you. So in the end, the strategy is lean in, listen to what they have to say, and ask questions. I think we all often forget that listening is the most important tool we have. It's not speaking, even though I do a lot of speaking right now. It's really not. It's listening to other people and try to understand and unpack what it is they're really saying. People say shit, but they don't mean it. People want to express something and can't. So listening is one. And then number two is always the three principles of, they might tell you what they want. Okay, cool. But that's not necessarily what they need. That's your job as a creative to figure out, okay, I heard you. Now, I think this is what you need. So you give them in the end always a certain range. We can't get around that. You give them what they kind of want or need, but you always go above and beyond. You say, listen, look, this is what it could be. I get that. But now that they trust you, now that they know you heard them, now that you know they opened up, their hearts are open. They want to hear you. Now you come in for the kill. They don't know that. But that's when you're like, okay, listen, great, but how about this? So building trust with a client is key. And I think most successful, anyone in our industry really, but creatives for sure, successful creatives are the ones that can build trust with coworkers, trust with bosses, and certainly clients. I mean, our clients rely on us in advertising, I would say 95% of the time, in everything, right? They hire us to come up with, in most cases, the strategy, certainly the creative part. I get that. That's stressful on their end. So I do think trust is important, and once the trust is built, and I think between any human being, uh, it's easy. It's easier for sure.
Love that the first part was about listening, and that's why they say God gives you two ears and one mouth, right? So the first
Yes.
step is listening and then figuring out what it is that they want. That's beautiful, and I love how you're going to go in for the kill.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, brilliant. um, you've obviously been in the industry for quite some time. You have a couple of decades under your belt. You've been tracking trends along this time, so I'm going to challenge you to kind of share what are some of the trends in terms of marketing, communication, advertising that you're seeing on the horizon right now.
Well, I think the issue we currently have is everything is moving, and this is probably always the case, but more than ever very fast. And I think in fast also a lack of depth. And I tell you right now, personally, I'm a huge not fan of social media. I think it does a lot of damage to society. And when you look at the problem at hand, is something so big, so absolutely important to so many people, channels that we cannot ignore, especially in healthcare, can also become the biggest issue. And I think we need to be both very close to these channels in monitoring and certainly gathering insight. Use it as that tool of insight to inform our understanding of our audiences, and that has to happen very, very fast and very timely. That in itself can be an issue, right? We traditionally are not built in large agencies to be that agile. We come with big departments, we come with long processes. All that doesn't necessarily work for us in going with the speed of how content, opinions, trends, mindsets are shifting and changing in amongst everyone, right? Patients, consumers in general, healthcare professionals. So that's one thing. But the flip side is also that I do still believe that there's got to be a certain level of dignity in how we relate to patients and diseases in general. Again, I go back to what I said earlier. Treating people that have health issues or as an HCP and or even directly to a patient comes from a different place. There is a certain level of dignity I think we need to value, and not simply trying to get to people for no good reason, but really, again, truly be authentic about the way we address people, take people seriously, and avoid the pitfalls of fast-moving trends that could essentially hurt, not just our industry, but people along the way. So I do believe that all the trends we are seeing, especially in the fast-moving ways of social media, are important, very important to track, but also with a lot of caution not to go into the traps of them. I also do think that the creativity that we defined in all those years, or the way we defined conceptual work or approaches, that all is and has changed tremendously. A good idea could be anything, and is just no longer a classic marriage of like a visual or a headline. And that's why, again, what I said earlier, creativity is coming from everyone. A good idea could be a sound, it could be a music tune, it could be a dance, it could be whatever. It's just not necessarily in the classic ways, one in the same conceptual idea. So I think that is something we need to get used to, the fluidity, the fast paced, but also, and that is my biggest hope, that we can make an impact there as GSW, and then what we do is always with empathy and maintaining that dignity towards the patients and HCPs in our very special healthcare world.
I love that, keeping that dignity and making sure you're empathetic to your audience, because I do agree. I think we live in a very fast-paced world where sometimes that gets lost along the way.
Yeah.
You noted early on in your conversation about some of the teams you're working with now and how grateful you were to be welcomed into the GSW family. But you've had some quite very good experience in building high performing teams. What are some of your keys to success? What are those qualities that make for a high performing team?
Mm. Well, I when I left my last gig, and there was one conversation I had with a dear friend of mine who had been following me over the years from pretty much one agency to the next, and I said to him, I said, listen, I'm sorry that I'm leaving you. Uh, I was really sorry. We're friends. And he said, that's okay. I'm gonna follow you regardless. Just give it time. And I said, well, oh, that's really sweet. And he said, you're the best boss I ever had. And this now sounds like cheesy, right? But he said, the difference is you lead by example. And I believe that's what a good team is made of. I think every single one on the team has to pull their weight. I believe in doers. I believe in people who, roll up their sleeves and dive right in and expect the same from everybody around them. It's a little bit, like how I raise my child. My son would tell you I'm a very hands-off mother. I don't micromanage him. I never have, but I have high expectations, and I think that to me is a good recipe to grow young children into adults. And I certainly believe that's the measure we have to hold against adults. We're all hired for a reason. We all have our degrees. We all have our skill sets. We all have our resumes. So we're here for a reason. Now, I can expect of any human being, any adult, that they're accountable and that they do their job and they do the best they can. At the same time, and giving them the freedom to do so. Uh, and I think so far it always shakes out the right way, because look, the right people, the good people, the skilled people, the smart, hardworking people, they will show up. And you don't have to force them. You don't have to crack the whip. You don't have to demand this and that and the other thing. And the ones who don't will show up too. So it's a win-win. You get most freedom you can imagine, but also at the highest level of expectation to deliver the best work.
I love that you're hands off and that you are making everybody accountable. That's yeah, it's a refreshing take on leadership. Micromanaging doesn't often work, and but you give your folks the freedom to do and the support to be successful. What is some of the best leadership advice you've ever received?
A good question. I'm now going through all the skeletons in my closet of bosses. um, you know, the one thing, and this is someone that I still value very, very much. I should not name his name, but I will. Ralph Skorge, who was one of the greatest creative directors at the CDM Group back in the day, my dear friend. And he was someone who said, if you're not passionate about your idea, no one else will be. And that is still true to the core. We know in our hearts when it's a good idea. And I think we just need to let that shine and stick with that and believe in that gut feeling. There's so much people can tell you, around you. Everybody will weigh in. You can show your ideas to your grandmother, to your sister, to your best friend. Everybody will give you, and that's not going to get you anywhere. I think that passion, that light, that fire that burns somewhere in there, just trust that. Just trust that gut that when it's a good idea, you know it. And we also know it when it's really not. And he also said, if an idea needs too much noodling, too much thinking, too much tweaking, if your mouse has been hovering over this thing for like ever, you're just trying too hard. And if it takes you this long to make it work, it takes the audience even longer to get it. So just forget about it.
Those are two key. That's great. If your passion will come through, and yeah, if it's too complicated, move along. I think that's
Yeah.
great. Thank you for sharing those.
Yes.
You're a role model in the industry. So is there anything you would like to pass on to other women in the field? Something you wish you had known sooner than you know now in your journey to the C-suite?
Yes, listen, it's a really, really super question, and absolutely, as you can imagine, so important to me. I was not raised as the woman I am today. I can tell you, not at all. And it took a long time. And I do think that my generation has done some groundwork for younger women who are entering. My stepdaughter just last year started her first job in advertising, in healthcare advertising. So I warned her. I said, "Are you sure?" But she but she did, and I already see such a difference in the way she's approaching her career. And the major difference is that she's putting life first and work second. And that is not how I was raised. That is not how most of us were raised. And I think, especially for women, it's time to turn that around. It's time to acknowledge that, yeah, we have a lot on our plate. We have kids to raise, we have boyfriends, husbands, families, friends. Oh yeah, a job, all of this. And it's been so valued in all these years, and I say that a bit sarcastically. Oh, women do it all, they can't do it all. You know what? Maybe we don't want to do it all. Maybe it's okay for us too to say here and there, no, I don't have to juggle five things right now. I want to do just one thing. And maybe today I'm not taking any meetings on my calendar because I need to rest. I need to read a book. I need to go out into the forest, like right now, and take a breather, because we're human beings too, and just because we're fabulous and can do it all doesn't mean we should do it all. And I do think that the younger generation, and especially ones that are now in the workforce, they get that, and I give them kudos, and I say, you go girl, take your time if you need your time, because especially in creative, there's no way that just because you sit at your desk for 9, 10, 11 hours a day, you're going to produce better ideas. Make the 2, 3 hours where you're actually really creative. Make those hours work hard for you. And the rest is go for a walk, be administrative, go to your meetings, all this stuff. But I think, especially, women who are so known for being so great at so many things, need to just now learn to sit back a bit and say, okay, but what are my real priorities? And be proud of it and speak up. And I do think everybody around us can learn from that. Like, even my dear husband can learn from it still when I say, listen, you don't have to do this right now. You can just kick back. and read a book, and he's the first to do it.
That's awesome. That's great advice. Certainly something that we can all learn to do more of is to pause, assess where we are, and then move along. And since this is our WOW podcast program, so finally, I'd like to ask you about an accomplishment or a WOW moment in your career that either changed the trajectory of your career or has left a lasting impression on you.
Yes. Well, in a way, it's been for me not a moment in time. I'm very honest with you. I think it was more the realization after all these years being in New York and working hard. I tell you, when I first came to New York, I did not think much of myself. I was just a girl, just a girl coming from Germany with a book under my arm, barely speaking the language. I said back then to my boyfriend, I said, listen, I might just do waitressing for some time and see how it goes. Again, long story short, that the thing is, where I am today, I still take it as a surprise sometimes. I'm still thinking, oh wow, look at that. That's cool. I'm still very, I don't know, humble about it in a way that I'm like, I don't know, this is cool, but it, it's I see it as a gift, and I'm still the same person, but it is a gift, and I'm just always grateful. I look out and I'm like grateful to all the great teachers I had, my good bosses I had, the good clients that loved my ideas and supported them, the people, the colleagues, my teams, everybody whoever I worked with who just help me learn more, understand more. I think it's just an organic process. I really can't say there was a moment in time. It was just that entire journey that I'm like grateful for. Just grateful that it kind of worked out. I got a job, and now I have a really good job.
I would say it more than just kind of worked out for you. So, very humble and very modest. And I have so enjoyed getting to know you a little bit. And I love your philosophy on creativity. And I wish you great success at GSW and go get them. Thank you so much for spending some of your time with me today. So appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. And it was really wonderful. Thank you, Taryn.
Thanks for listening to this episode of WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast. And thanks again to Syneos Health for sponsoring this episode. For more information, visit syneoshealth.com. And don't forget to check out our other WOW podcast episodes at pharmavoice.com/wow. This 2021 program is copyrighted by PharmaLinks, LLC.